I always believed that my marriage was something strong and unbreakable. 20 years together, a house, a life together, the joys and difficulties we had experienced. All this seemed to be proof of our love. But it turned out that it was just an illusion, a beautifully wrapped lie that I, a fool, believed in until the very end. I didn't just lose my wife. I lost my trust, my peace of mind, and all the money I had been saving for years. As she didn't just leave, she disappeared, leaving me with debts, a lot of questions, and the main dilemma: how to live on. Have you ever thought that the person you trusted the most could ruin your life in one move? And now imagine that it happened at the age of 50, when it's not so easy to build a new life. Just a few months ago, I would wake up in my big house next to my wife and be sure that everything was fine. I was working in a company that I founded myself, earning enough money for us to live comfortably. We had plans for the future together, traveling, buying a new car, maybe moving to a warmer state. My wife, Alice, didn't work. She always said she didn't want to chase a career and preferred to stay at home. I supported her choice because it seemed to me that she was happy. I tried to make sure she didn't lack anything. I was sure we had a great marriage. But I was wrong. To be honest, it took me a while to realize that something was wrong. This is not surprising when you are used to trusting a person. You do not look for a catch where you think there cannot be one. That Alice became colder, more distant. She was no longer interested in my affairs, did not ask how my day was. She always had her phone with her now, even in the shower. I thought it was just a midlife crisis, temporary difficulties. I decided that maybe we needed to spend more time together. But the more I tried, the more she pulled away. And then even stranger things happened constant. Meetings with friends. Late nights, new expensive clothes that I definitely didn't buy. And that's when I first thought, what if she has someone? I didn't want to believe it. Most of all, I wanted to deny the very possibility of infidelity. I told myself that it was just an imagination, that I was winding myself up because of fatigue and stress. But one day, when she came home late at night, I couldn't stand it. I asked her directly, "Alice, are you seeing someone else?" She laughed. She said it was nonsense, that I was going overboard. But her eyes, they were not sincere. That night I lay in bed for a long time without sleep. I was gnawed by anxiety. And then something happened that changed everything. One day I received an anonymous message. "Your wife is seeing someone else. She has been lying to you for a long time." The message included a hotel reservation number. My heart was pounding as I opened the hotel's website. I entered the reservation number and saw a naming. Alice Johnson. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't just a suspicion. It was confirmation. And then I was faced with the question, what next? There were few options. I could pretend that nothing had happened. I could pack my things and just leave. But I decided that I needed the truth. I had to know everything. And I did. But that was only the beginning. When I looked back, I realized that everything was too good to be true. Alice and I met in my 30s. She was 7 years younger, attractive, intelligent, with a sharp tongue and that magical lightness that makes men lose their heads. I fell head over heels in love. Everything was just like in the movies. Dates, traveling, romantic dinners. I was sure I had found my man. 2 years later, we got married. Life seemed perfect. I earned well, provided for us, and never counted money. Alice didn't work, and she didn't need to. She took care of the house, the farm, and I did everything to make her feel happy. From the outside, we looked like a perfect couple. Friends were jealous. Relatives said we were made for each other. She's a treasure, my mother used to say. Don't spoil it, my best friend joked. I just laughed. I knew it. Alice is mine, and she loves me as much as I love her. But even the most precious picture eventually fades if you look closely. During the first years of our marriage, we were inseparable. She would greet me from work with kisses, we would have dinner together, and make plans. But gradually something started to change. At first it was just little things. She became less interested in our conversations. She was always holding the phone. I was joking. What's so interesting there? Stocks or world news? She just waved me off. My friends are writing. And then it got worse. She began to come out more and more often in the evening, explaining that she was meeting girls. You don't mind, do you, darling? She would ask in a sweet voice. Of course not, I answered. And indeed I didn't mind. I trusted her, but with each passing month this trust began to crack. I remember that evening. She came home at 2 in the morning, although she said she would be home by 11. We got delayed, she said without even looking at me. I didn't say anything, but I felt something strange. It was the first time I was hurt by her cold attitude. That night I lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling. And then her sudden travels. For several days began new clothes, expensive jewelry that I did not buy. That's when an alarm bell went off inside me. But I didn't want to believe it. I convinced myself that it was just my imagination. That she was just having fun, that everyone goes through periods when they want change. You're just working yourself up, I told myself. But thoughts did not let go. And then I decided to do something I had never done before. I started to observe. I started to notice details. She always left the room when someone called her. Her phone was now password locked, even though we had no secrets before. She started spending more money, but she wouldn't explain why. Her meetings with friends became more frequent and her excuses weaker. I felt like the ground was cracking under my feet, but I still refused to accept it. One evening, when she was about to leave, I stopped her at the door. Gunhild, Alice, what's going on? What are you talking about? What are these meetings? Why do you keep disappearing? She rolled her eyes. God, are you serious? I just have a life, you know. I don't have to stay at home and wait for you like a dog. Her words hit me like a fist in the stomach. It's not about that. You've changed. You're distant. She sighed and answered coldly, You're just imagining things. I wanted to believe her, but something in her eyes made me feel that she was lying. And then I realized that this is no longer a perfect marriage. It was just an illusion that I was trying to keep. But illusions are always shattered. What did I learn next? What was the woman I had trusted all my life hiding from me? And what consequences were ahead of me? A betrayal never falls from the sky. It comes gradually, leaving behind small clues if you are ready to see them. I was not ready. I grabbed at every excuse, every justification, because it was too painful to believe in deception. But once the doubts settled in my head, they never left me alone. One evening, Alice said she was going out to dinner with her friends. It was a familiar story. I didn't even ask who she was going with. But that time I happened to see her drive up to the restaurant. She didn't know that I was nearby. It was just a coincidence that I was coming home from work and stopped at a traffic light. Alice got out of the car, smiled, looked around, and then a man approached her. He was tall, well-dressed, confident. He said something to her and she laughed. Not just politely, it was the laugh I knew well. This kind of laughter was only for special people. I felt my insides go cold. But I wanted to get out of the car, go over and ask what was going on. But I didn't. I just sat there and watched them walk into the restaurant together. From that day on, I started to notice even more. Her phone was always with her now. Anna, she even took it with her in the shower. She started staying out late in the evenings more often, and in the morning she acted as if nothing had happened. She got new clothes, expensive and stylish. But when I asked where they came from, she just shrugged her shoulders. Oh, that was a long time ago. She wanted intimacy less and less. She always found excuses, tired, not in the mood, headache. I felt more and more that a wall was forming between us. But then I still hoped I was wrong. One day I came home earlier than usual. Alice was not waiting for me. There was a second cup of coffee in the kitchen. Did you have a guest? I asked, trying to sound calm. Yes, Lisa came by. She answered nonchalantly. But Lisa was in another city. I knew this because I had seen her photos on social media, and it wasn't the first time she lied to me. Next time she came late. I hugged her and breathed in the familiar smell of her perfume, but there was another scent. A man's. What is that you smell like? Oh, maybe someone was standing next to me at the bar. She was nervous. Kitty didn't say anything. I just felt everything in my stomach tighten. I decided to check her phone. I hadn't done it before because I thought it was wrong, but now I had doubts. And what did I see? Deleted messages, a clean call list, as if she was hiding her tracks. That night lay awake for a long time. I could no longer deny the obvious, but was I ready to find out the truth? And that's when I decided to act. Suspicions are one thing, but proof is quite another. I could still close my eyes, make excuses, convince myself that everything was wrong. But when you have something concrete in your hands, there is no turning back. I knew that the truth was close, and that I would not like it. I thought about what to do for a long time. Should I just ask her? She would lie. Should I make a scandal? She would turn everything around and make me look bad. No, I needed facts. Solid, indisputable evidence. So I decided to follow her. Yes, I stooped to this. But I had no other choice. One evening, Alice was going out with her friends again. I nodded as usual and wished her a good time. And then I took the car and followed her. I kept my distance. Didn't attract attention. She couldn't have noticed me. I had calculated everything. She drove up to an expensive hotel. She stopped, got out of the car, and he was already waiting for her there. The same man I had seen outside the restaurant. Tall, confident. He hugged her. She answered him with the same laugh. And then they went inside, without haste, without fear that someone would see them. Like a couple that hasn't been hiding for a long time. I stayed in the car, unable to move. There it was, the truth. I could not believe my eyes. I could find excuses again. In a rebut, when a person enters a hotel with a lover, there is no room for doubt. Everything inside me was screaming. I wanted to run out, do something, scream, break everything around me. But I did nothing. I just sat there and looked out the window. I used to think that if this happened, I would leave immediately. But now, when it became a reality, I didn't know what to do. Divorce her. Disgrace her. Take revenge. I went home, poured myself a drink and sat in the dark for a long time. Tomorrow I would take the first step. I didn't know what it would be, but I knew for sure that I wouldn't be silent anymore. The next morning I woke up different. No, not stronger, not calmer, but no longer someone who closes his eyes. I could no longer live in this lie. I didn't want to justify it or pretend that nothing had happened. There was only one solution to put an end to it. I decided to get a divorce, and not to give her any chance to avoid the consequences. When Alice returned home, I was waiting for her in the kitchen. She came in, smiling as if nothing had happened. How was your evening? Holding the phone in my hands. She didn't even realize that I already knew everything. It was great. We had so much fun. That's interesting, because it looks like you weren't with your friends. Her face tensed. What what? What are you talking about? Don't, Alice. I threw the phone in front of her. I saw you at the hotel. She was silent for a few seconds. And then she smiled, not guilty, not scared, with a challenge. Aura, you were spying on me. She crossed her arms over her chest. Or is that all you have to say? What can I say? It's your fault. You became boring. You didn't notice me. I could barely stop myself from breaking something. So it's my fault. You just don't get it. She rolled her eyes. I'm still young. I want to live, and you. She fell silent, but I had already realized everything. She was no longer interested in me. I wasn't needed. She had written me off a long time ago. Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce, I said. She wasn't surprised. Okay, she shrugged, but I'm keeping the house. I laughed. Are you serious? Yes, I invested money in him. That was a lie. I bought the house before we got married, and now I realized that she had been preparing for this for a long time. She thought she could just take everything and leave, leaving me with nothing. But she didn't expect me to be so cunning. The next morning I went to see a lawyer. The house was still mine, but when I returned home, Alice was gone, and my money was gone. She withdrew all our joint savings and just disappeared. I stood in the middle of the empty house and couldn't believe it. I thought she was at least a little bit honest. But she just used me. Oh, I wanted to control the divorce myself, and she just went ahead and ruined all my plans. Well, the game has just begun. I once read stories about men who lost everything after a divorce. And I thought, well, this will definitely not happen to me. How wrong I was. Alice disappeared taking our money, and I was left alone in an empty house. And that was just the beginning of my downfall. The first thing I did was check my accounts. Guess what I saw there? Nothing. Not a single cent. Alice had pulled out all of our joint savings. She had also somehow managed to get loans in my name. How? I wanted to know that too. I decided that at least the house was mine. But when I checked the documents, it turned out that Alice had been fraudulent for a long time. She signed some papers, changed the property, set me up so that now I owe the bank. And I had no other choice. I had to sell the house to pay off the debts. I was left homeless. I called my friends. The same ones who swore loyalty, who were at my wedding, who shouted, "You can count on us." Guess how many of them answered? None. Some did not pick up the phone. Some wrote a short, "I'm sorry," and disappeared. Some of them said directly, "We have our own business, sorry." And I realized one thing. Una, no one needs you when you are at the bottom. I thought that the bottom had already been reached. But it was deeper. I was sued. Yes, that's right. Alice claimed that I had threatened her, that she had run away for a reason, from a domestic tyrant. And now I had another problem, to prove that it was a lie. But who would be interested in my truth? The court, as always, is on the woman's side. I was sitting in a cheap motel with bills I didn't know how to pay, and I was thinking, what now? I was left with nothing. But is this the end? Or was it just the beginning of my new life? I sat in a cheap motel, nibbling on a stale croissant from yesterday's free coffee. My creditors were calling nonstop, my lawyer was demanding payment, and my bank account was as empty as my future. Or was it? Because that's when I realized that sitting around feeling sorry for myself was pointless. Did Alice think I had broken down? She was wrong. I started looking for a job. I didn't choose. I took anything that brought me at least some money. I unloaded boxes in a supermarket, worked as a driver, even washed windows in business centers. I, the former owner of a successful company who until recently lived in a luxurious house. But you know what? I didn't care, because every dollar I earned was a step towards my return. Life has shown me that friends can disappear, but sometimes help comes from places you don't expect. One day after my shift, my former client, Tom, came up to me. He remembered me as a successful businessman and was surprised that I was working with my hands. "You're a smart guy," he said. "Oh, what are you doing here?" I shrugged my shoulders. Starting over. He silently handed me a business card. Tom offered me a small position in his firm. Nothing big, just a manager. But it was more than just a job. It was a chance to get back in the game, and I grabbed it with a deadly grip. In a day after day, I was learning to be the person I used to be. I was negotiating, proposing ideas, working 7 days a week. I didn't think about Alice anymore. I only thought about how to become better than I was. I started a new life. But there was one question that kept haunting me. How was Alice? Did she really think I would just disappear from her life? No, she didn't. This story is not over yet. I didn't think I would ever see her again. I really didn't. After everything she did, after all the money she stole, after she left me with nothing. But one night I opened the door, and there she was. Alice, tired, drained, but still with that same cheeky smile. "Ooh, hi," she said, as if nothing had happened. "Oh, what are you doing here?" She sighed, looked down, as if suddenly ashamed. "I need to talk to you." I could barely contain my laughter. Talk. After everything. but my curiosity got the better of me. Okay, go ahead. Alice told me that her new, perfect man turned out to be not so perfect after all. He used her like she used me. And then he left her without what money, without a house, without anything. When she realized she had made a mistake, it was too late. And now she's back. To me. I know I hurt you. Her voice broke. But I'm really sorry. But I looked at her and felt, no, not pity, relief. She was waiting for an answer, her eyes filled with tears. Once I would have given anything to hear those words again. But now I could see right through her. Alice. I said her name slowly. Did you think I would be sorry? She nodded. I laughed. And I thank you, because without you I wouldn't be who I am today. And I closed the door on her. I stood by the door, feeling like a stone was falling from my soul. I was not sorry. I was not angry. I was just free. But it was not over yet. I thought I had closed this chapter of my life once and for all. But Alice did not give up. The next morning she showed up on my doorstep again. I was going to just ignore her, but she started knocking harder, begging loudly, "Please, Derek, listen to me!" Finally, I wondered what else she wanted. I opened the door. Do you really not understand the word no? Alice looked terrible. Her eyes were red, her hair was disheveled, and her hands were shaking. "Oh, I have nowhere to go," she whispered. What am I supposed to do with this? I know I messed up, I know I hurt you. But you were the only one who really loved me. I snorted. Did I? Once maybe. As she grabbed my hand, her fingers cold. Derek, please. At least give me a roof over my head for a few days. I will fix everything, I promise. I looked at her and felt something like pity, but it was not the same pity as before, not weakness. I knew what Alice was, and I couldn't let her manipulate me again. No, I said firmly. She opened her eyes wide. Please. I said no, and I closed the door. Oh, I thought that would be the end of it. But an hour later, Alice texted me. If you don't accept me, I will tell everyone your biggest secret. I froze. She was playing dirty. But I was ready. It wasn't over yet. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone screen. If you don't accept me, I will tell everyone your biggest secret. Alice's words flickered before my eyes like an alarm. I clutched the phone in my hand, feeling the anger building inside me. This woman will not change. She had lost, but instead of accepting defeat, she decided to throw one last punch. I knew I didn't have any terrible secrets. Well, at least none that could really hurt me. But I also knew that Alice was a great liar. If she needed to, she would make up something that would make people believe. A few minutes later, the phone lit up again. I'm giving you one last chance. If you don't want to get in trouble, meet me at the cafe around the corner. 1 hour. Otherwise, I'll act. I was not going to give in to this blackmail. But at the same time, I couldn't let her spread gossip and invade my life again. I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes before the appointed time. I ordered a coffee and sat down at a table by the window. Alice showed up exactly an hour later, as scheduled. She looked even worse than yesterday. She sat down across from me, crossed her arms over her chest. Well, you realize you can't just ignore me, right? I leaned back in my chair. Do you realize that your blackmail won't work? And I know she blinked. I know enough to ruin your life. Well, you do. Then tell everyone. Just make sure you don't have to answer for the lies yourself. She bit her lip. Her cards were out. And I had one more move. And I pulled out my phone and turned on the recording. By the way, I'm recording this conversation. If I hear your name mentioned again, I'm going to report it to the police. Alice went pale. Now get out of my life. I got up and left the cafe. For the first time in a long time, I felt real peace. I had won. But what would happen next? I left the cafe, leaving Alice alone. The wind cooled my hot head a little, but I still felt tense. Was this really the end? Or would she come up with something else? I had learned one simple truth: you can't run away from people like her. My life started to get better. I returned to my business, worked 7 days a week, distracting myself from everything that had happened. A few months passed, and I almost forgot about Alice. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I had a feeling that it wasn't over yet. One day I was returning home late at night. In the entrance, right next to my doormat, there she was. Alice. Exhausted, wearing an old jacket, without a trace of her former confidence. She looked up at me. "And I have nowhere to sleep?" she whispered. I stared at her in silence. Was I supposed to help her? Or was I supposed to leave her on the street, just like she had left me with nothing? Or was I ready to let her back into my life, and I didn't know the answer? And that was the worst part. I hope you find this story interesting. Your feedback and suggestions, as well as subscriptions, are always welcome.